Hey, good afternoon and welcome. My name is Rob, aka Lantern Noir, and I am here for episode 51 of Old Timer Tavern with my affable and gregarious partner.
Graybeard's Tavern.
And we are back in the saddle. We had a week off because you were on vacation,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to our usual week off, which now means my brilliant plan of having a paid D&D game on alternating Tuesdays from the podcast has
Mm.
been fully thwarted.
We can switch it back anytime you want. Whatever we need to do to make your new employment situation work great.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Again, the best part about retirement is I have lots of options for when I want to do things, up to and
Mm-hmm.
including I might be adding to my weekly schedule a streamed game on the Pacific Coast schedule
Oh,
because I've been trying
when
to get the Reluctant Hermit to the table, and
uh
he's on West Coast time,
yeah.
and so I'm looking forward to trying to pull him over and bring him in. Couple of legends. Nah, we're just a couple of farts with some experience. That's all we are. We're just some old farts with experience.
Uh,
But
though my Star Wars D&D anniversary,
how did it go?
45, 45 years, man. This is my 45th. 1977, saw Star Wars, played D&D all in the same weekend. And yeah, I got to see it at the opening. I know I've told the story, but it's one of my favorites, and it bears telling again because it's this year. My parents were getting divorced. My aunt was in her teens, and Star Wars was huge. I was like in awe of the commercials and whatnot. No one had seen Star Wars yet. Opening night, we go walking up to the what was called the State Theater, and there's a drawbridge in the middle of our town. And we got to the drawbridge, and there were people in a line, and that line went down the bridge, down the block, past the bank, around the court, like the by the courthouse and the downtown, all the buildings downtown, and then back around the block of the theater. And my aunt, being a cutie pie, a teen, just bounced from friend to friend like she belonged there. Saying, "Oh, hey, Rob, and hey, Dan, and hey," and talking, and we just kept going until she spotted someone else, and then she would be like, "Okay, well, we got to go meet up with," and then we'd go to the next people until we got like a dozen people from the front door at opening day, and so we were the first peeps in our town to see it. So A New Hope. Yeah. So anyway,
Or as we
that's
used to say, Star Wars, the first one.
Star Wars. Yes, exactly.
You had to qualify. It was always, the first one.
First one.
Because,
Number four.
but we never talked about it as number 4. That
Right.
was the
Right.
kicker. Everything was branded Star Wars
Yep.
until we got Empire Strikes Back.
Yep.
And then Empire Strikes Back, everything was branded Star Wars. The Empire Strikes Back.
Yep.
And it wasn't really until after Return of the Jedi
Yeah.
that they really started to brand A New Hope as A New Hope. But even then, they didn't put a lot of work until they started pitching the prequels around 2000
Right. Right.
or 90. Crap, when was the first prequel? Was the
99.
yeah, I think it's
So
when
it
they
seems like 99. I think.
yes, because I was teaching in the old building.
Mm.
And I was afraid. I remember talking to students saying I was afraid it was going to be crap
Mm.
because I'm like, I'm not sure I'm ready to go. Like, can you recapture that lightning in a bottle that was the original Star Wars trilogy? And as an old fart, no, no, you
Well,
cannot.
and when he put out the digitally remastered copies, I took a day off work, and I was at the theater at like 10 a.m. expecting people to be out front and a line and all that, and then there was no cars in the thing except over there was like some employees cars or whatever, and I walked in and there's nothing, and they're open, and I'm like, Star Wars. tickets? And they were like, sure, bloop, 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 theater, whatever. And I went down there, and in the end, it was like me and three other people to see the digitally remastered Star Wars, you know.
Okay, so
Um,
they got to answer Arwen's question, they were
yeah,
designated 4, 5, and 6 at release.
yes.
So the opening crawl of that first Star Wars movie, Star Wars, the first one,
Mm-hmm.
said Episode 4, A New Hope,
Yep.
and everyone just kind of forgot that
Yeah.
because it was the only Star Wars, and then when we got to Empire Strikes Back, it became known as it wasn't Star Wars 2,
Right.
and it wasn't released as Star Wars 5.
Right.
It was released as Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back,
Yep.
which I thought was also very interesting and a little outside of the norm for the way movies were released.
Yep.
I also believe, I'm going to double check this. I'm going to do a quick Google on this to see
All
if
right.
I'm not wrong. But there's a story that he get fined for not putting credits at the start. He
Mm.
did.
Mm.
In the opening crawl, you'll notice that the Star Wars opens, there's no opening credits.
Right.
There's no cast, no produced by, no directed by, nothing.
Yeah.
It just goes right into exposition dump,
Yep.
action. And he got fined, according to this article on Reddit,
Mm-hmm.
he got fined $250,000
Wow. Wow.
because he did not follow well, this one was for Empire Strikes Back.
Mm.
I think he got fined for New Hope for doing it, but he didn't have his director's credit.
Hmm.
And so they fined him as a member of the Directors Guild for not following the Directors Guild rule of you put the director's name in the opening of the film.
Right. Well, and that's what's really weird about watching older films nowadays too, is they give you a hook sometimes, but then they go right into, a song, and all the credits are going up, particularly something like Lawrence of Arabia. Oh my goodness, the credits are, because there was a cast of thousands, or Cleopatra, same way. It's like, 6 minutes of people's names scrolling past before the movie actually starts. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. The second half of that weekend, where I got introduced to D&D, it was because my best bud at the time, I was 8, and he was 2 years older than me. He was 10, and his best bud from soccer team, best bud on the soccer team was Beth, and she was 2 years older than him. And then her brother was 4 years older than her, Mark. And so Mark was our DM. He was like 16. He had played in 1976. He had played D&D with Gary Gygax at Gen Con, one of the first times it had been out in the public, at Gen Con, at a convention. And so that's the 7 stages of separation from Gary Gygax, for me. And yeah, I got to meet Gary like a half dozen times over the years, and I even went to his funeral. So that was interesting. It was a road trip. We all, like me, my brother, and my other bud, we all went to Gary's funeral, and afterwards we all went to a VFW hall and played games together with Luke and whatnot. And yeah, good times. And like I said, lifelong. I've been doing it forever since then. First character was an elemental. Because back then, who cared? There was no rules. It was so much more of a 16-year-old going, okay, you're a fire elemental, and you're a stone earth elemental, and you're what was Beth's character? Misty. She was a air elemental. And so, yeah, so we were all elementals and we had crazy adventures, and I was like hooked for life. So
Well,
it's
that speaks to I don't think we're prepared to do a full episode on it yet because I am only on episode 3 of the new season of Stranger Things. But it has definitely brought back the that era of Dungeons and Dragons is this thing the weird Pete kids do. And everyone knows they're weird. How do you know they're weird? Because they do the weird thing. They play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yup. Yeah, so there was a TV show called Freaks and Geeks that was in that 70s 80s period and set in there, and the geeks, the nerds of the time, they were D&D kids and this and that, and there's a few episodes in that show where they play D&D, and they take the cool stoner kid and get him to play D&D, and oh my god, it's very, very funny because it's James Franco who's like the cool stoner kid, and he ends up playing D&D with the nerds, and it's so good. If ever you get a chance to watch it, it's a good show that definitely will. They just nailed it. They just nailed that time period so well. Again, so does Stranger Things. It's just the perfect nostalgia bomb,
Well, it totally is. That's a big part of that series is that it's always done a nice job of capturing some aspect really well. And I think we're on pace. By the next time that we have a sit down to hang out, I will be caught up on Stranger Things. Are you on track to do the same?
I am.
Okay. Cool. So that topic's set aside.
All right.
Well, let's make sure we put some big spoiler tags on everything.
Right. And we've got, 4 seasons now to talk about on it. So,
okay. Can we pause and dissect this comment from chat?
Sure.
Arwen's pitching out here that her mom is convinced that she's never going to get married because she plays D&D. and to the point at which she's commenting that she no longer lets her mom see D&D related Facebook posts because it reminds her mom that she is going to be single the rest of her life.
I see.
So, as the elder statesman of the room, how do we address young Arwen's romantic rumblings?
And I'm sure that you're going to follow suit on this. The first time that I met my significant other was at a D&D game, and let's see, this was 29 last month was 29 years that we've been together. Yeah 29 years.
So that's May.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to do something over the winter holiday.
All right.
And the reason I say that is we are celebrating 20 this October.
Nice. All right.
I think we need to get together.
Yeah.
Because this will be an opportunity for us to both celebrate a 5-year milestone.
Right.
It's a good excuse. I did, and thank you for the save on the typo, because that would have been awkward. But yeah, and that's here too. Mrs. Noir and I met playing a live action vampire, and I still remember looking across that room when she walked in and going, "Wow, I gotta talk to her." And God help me if she asks if I have a girlfriend, because I might actually lie to her.
Well, so Tavern Sparrow says, so when I had just had my guts put back together when we met. I'm not joking. I was barely starting to walk again, kind of thing. And that's a long story, and we won't talk about that. But anyway, so I was literally, I had, big scars in my guts, and I had to have things reattached and stuff. And anyway, so I was wearing Marine Corps sweats and a pink tie-dye t-shirt. So burgundy and blue sweats and a pink tie-dye t-shirt. And, and Tavern Sparrow's first thought is, he's cute, but is he colorblind? So yeah. So
Ouch.
yeah. Oh yeah. Anyway.
Well, and this ties back to the Star Wars topic, which is that through this block of time, let's be if we're being real, science fiction and fantasy were male dominated hobbies. I would almost make the comment that best way to meet a guy is to take up, at least when we were coming up, is for a young lady to take up Dungeons and Dragons or go see a Star Wars movie, because there were lots of guys.
Yep. The yeah, and that's one of the things that I always sing the praises of Vampire. Vampire really knocked the block off that to where it really brought in, because we it would have been 1989, I think. 1989, 1990, when we took over the Gamers Guild, and it was really like 40 of us and like 3 girls. And then Vampire came out, and it just swung. And then once people weren't afraid, once that stigma was gone, then the girls were playing champions, they were playing superheroes, they were playing D&D. It was awesome. It was just amazing.
Yeah, and that feeds into that aspect of the kind of looking at it from that historical point of view of just how much the hobby has caught up. And
yeah,
I think what gets me when we talk old school, people say I'm an old school rules player. That's all well and good.
You're back. You seem back.
Am I fully back?
I don't know. I can hear you.
Yes, we're back.
Woohoo!
Little tech glitch there. I just got the warning from Zoom is so delayed. It's like your internet appears to be unstable after it has fully self-corrected. It will say, by the way. But over the years, the hobby has become more progressive. And when people talk about the changes to the game, it's like, but these are many of these are changes that actually have helped make the game more inclusive. Yep. That have made it more comfortable for people that were not straight, white, nerdy males to come into play, which maybe if you're into that really chunky, crunchy math stuff, maybe it's not the game it used to be, because a lot of that's been simplified.
Yep.
That's another. See, that's the thing. Again, not to spoil anything, but if you look back into retrospect, Star Wars and D&D both had very much in common the need to memorize trivia. Like you weren't a real Star Wars. I mean, and this was before we got into the real fan thing. But like, if I remember, if you said you were a fan of Star Wars, you were kind of expected to have a favorite, like everything.
Yeah. Actually, did a type thing. Wookiees are from Keshek. Anyway,
the reason they are the way they are is because
it is so funny because my buddy Muddy is 10 times the Star Wars fan. My brother is 10 times the Star Wars fan I am. They are both 10 times the Lord of the Rings fan I am. And for 30 years, whenever the 3 of us get together, it starts, and I tend to pop topics or throw fire, gas on the fire, and then they, erupt into these debates. Tom Bombadil should have been in the movie, or why didn't they have the barrow mounds? And basically the Whomping Willow from Hogwarts is actually the tree that the hobbits got into. So.
Which does segue. I do adore the fact that when we did Kids on Brooms with the Hogwarts vibe, we renamed it to the Winsome Willow.
Winsome.
Because it was happy and it was friendly, and we just left unsaid that something happened over the years to turn into the Whomping Willow.
Yep. And so we're hoping to rekindle that same kind of wrench in the works tomorrow night too.
Wow, that is okay. So Shadow's kicking in as we talk about histories. Bombadil rocks. Fair point. Shadow's sharing that their mom used to make Star Wars and Star Trek costumes that were film quality.
Ooh,
solid.
Nice. Oh,
that is solid. I came into a lot of the hobby by way of costumers that we met via LiveJournal. So a friend of a friend got us into LiveJournal. That's what got us into this circle of costumers. And that's part of how I made some of my road into the more recent angles of the hobby was in their friendships. And that's an intense fandom when you start going down to the number of stitches per inch for a particular, because I did that. Okay. So Mrs. Noir is pregnant with our eldest teen.
Okay.
And we have planned a baby moon. So we are going to go do Disney, visit my grandparents in Tallahassee, and then fly up to Atlanta to do Dragon Con.
Wow.
So we flew to Orlando, and then we hopped to Georgia.
Yeah.
And then we hopped home. I think. But we did have to rent a car to get from Orlando to Tallahassee and back again. Because that's still like a 3-hour drive.
Yeah.
But one of the costumes she planned, because she was going 7 months pregnant.
Yeah.
She planned an all maternity costume collection. So one of them was Marie Antoinette, because a whole group were doing Marie Antoinette costumes, and she figured she could still hide the pregnancy. We also had what we called spoiler Tonks, because the most recent novel was the one that made it evident that Tonks had a kid. So pregnant Tonks would have been a spoiler. And then we also did Padme's maternity dress. The brown jumper with the cross belts. And the thingy here that we had to make with Sculpey. And I remember she would go to work, and I was off for the summer. We had no kids yet, so I could sew. And my stuff was already done. Like I had already made I had a BSG uniform. I think I had made my own for this one. And I was trying to make her one. It never quite came together. For some reason, I couldn't quite get my head around it. But she'd come home and she'd go, yeah, those are only supposed to be half an inch apart. This is a lot more like an inch apart.
Yeah.
Can you redo it tomorrow? Rip. Next day. Yeah. Did you adjust the setting on the sewing machine? Because these stitches are a lot tighter. That's just like a really high stitch per inch count. Can you redo it tomorrow?
Yeah. Love you, dear.
And I was good. I wasn't going to deny a pregnant woman her demands. So that's where that's at. So that was a fun. And the best part with that, there were the two side notes where she got complimented up one side and down the other for how accurate her fake belly looked when she was in Padme. Which included like a guy in Anakin costume coming up and apologizing to her. And there was an Obi-Wan who made a point of saying, "We'll see you soon, honeys. We'll see you soon, honeys." Right to her belly.
Right.
And then the fact that it wasn't until 3 years later when she resurrected the costume and was
Mhm.
not pregnant that anyone gave her any breaks for it.
Oh,
She used a fake belly then, and everybody was like, "Oh, you're pregnant. Come over here.
you can have this chair. Take this seat.
Yes, take the seat, cut in front. Here, I'm Felicia Day. I have an elevator to myself. You should ride up with me
Yes, yes.
because
Oh,
you're
the
pregnant."
Felicia Day. Yeah, that's right. Oh, dude, that's
And,
awesome.
I
That's
don't think I've ever seen her feel so guilty about receiving something as she did when she got off that elevator. Because,
I would have just been like, Felicia Day.
well, she had to come clean because it's like halfway up, she's like, "So when are you due?"
Oh, yeah.
Well, 3 years ago.
But did she get to tell the story, or was it too
Oh,
fast or too awkward?
they chatted a little bit, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I totally thought you were. I feel so stupid." And no, that's okay.
I was. That's why I made this. So
Yeah. So they did have a good chance to have that conversation, which was a lot of fun and more Star Wars content for you.
mhm. Oh man.
As we're
So
weaving Star Wars nerddom and Dungeons and Dragons this week.
yeah. So when Phantom Menace was coming out, we were in line, the midnight show on, and at the time they were doing weird stuff. So it was like Wednesday at midnight is the very first showing of this because it's supposed to open on Thursdays, but we're gonna have a special rah, rah, rah. And so like, half of us were in costume and and stuff, and the we got there for Phantom Menace and it was just insane, and that was the age of the laser pointer, and all this craziness is going on, and they had a person actually come out onto the stage in front of the screen and talk to us, and it's like, okay, any laser pointers, craziness, popcorn, screaming, baby, any of that, we're just gonna shut it down. You have been warned. And people were like, F you, kind of thing. So what was great was the screen opens, and I'm getting goosebumps telling the story. The screen opens, the THX noise comes up, silence. The theater went dark and silent. You could have, a pin could have fallen on a cushion and you could have heard it. It was so quiet, and it was just so the best. Like, yeah, mom told you, these are the rules, and just everybody was like, no, we don't want Star Wars to stop, So yeah, so there we were. And for like the first 15 minutes, I was so geeked. I was like, these are kung fu movie Jedi, lightsabers and cutting through things and doing kung fu drop leaps and all this. And I'm just so excited. And then Qui-Gon ran into Jar Jar, and I was like, what is happening?
As many people were.
Mm-hmm.
That was definitely like a culture shock to that film. Now, what's weird is for me, when we saw the remastered, I was in college when they released it, and I remember we had what we called the Midnight Movie Club, where we'd all meet in the dorm lobby about 11-ish, and then we would all walk together to one of the 2-3 movie theaters in Mount Pleasant at the time, because there was there was a theater downtown, 2 theaters downtown. They had converted into movie theaters. And then there was the Cineplex, which had like 3 screens on the main strip.
Yeah.
And with that one, like, we didn't get an announcement for the remastered, but we just went in, and it was like being at a sporting event. The lights went down, and everyone's volume went down. They did the THX logo, and then done. The opening titles hit, and the crawl starts, and everyone starts cheering.
Nice.
And it was like that the whole vibe, because like it wasn't like we weren't going to know what was going to happen,
right?
But to share that energy with other people, I mean, even by the way, there's a slight spoiler for Star Wars Episode 4. If you haven't seen it, please discontinue listening for about 60 seconds. He's like the shot in the trench Everyone goes silent until you see punk punk, and then it's just like, we all went nuts.
Right. Yeah.
And it was that vibe all the way through, which was so cool.
Yeah. It was a community. Okay, we know what's going to happen, but we gotta just
we're doing it together.
Right.
We're doing it together, which was a lot of fun. I am going to share your concerns with the prequels. I also was not a huge fan. I liked what they were trying to do. I appreciated it. And it's weird because the prequels happened.
Yeah.
And okay, so that's done. But then when we got to the final trilogy, I did not realize how not ready for it the youngest one, Kitty K, was when I took her to see it. Because my brain was still kind of back on the prequels of like, oh, this is definitely a kid-friendly movie. And we got through the opening 10 minutes of the first sequel trilogy, and she's like, we're done.
Yeah.
And I went, okay.
Yeah.
This was an expensive oops.
Yep.
But yes, we're done. Grab your Twilight Sparkle and your popcorn, and we're going out. I didn't even ask for a refund or anything. I'm like, this was dad blew this call.
Yep.
Phantom Menace is the first one. Yeah, a lot of people did.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because, I understand how people, the teens of my era must have felt about Jedi and the Ewoks. Is I was all excited about Ewoks because my little brother was still little, and stuff. And so, and I think he's in the chat. So, oh yeah, here he is. He was there. Anyway, so he was still little. So, Ewoks were all right and cool, and I enjoyed them. But when Phantom Menace came out and Jar Jar was there, I'm like, I get it now. I get it. I totally get it. It's that's why, because now my cool space movie has this goofy character, I mean, literally Disney goofy, that's all I could hear. And every time Jar Jar spoke was, Mickey and Goofy and Pluto. And I'm like, oh my God, you're killing me. So anyway, Clone Wars fixed the prequels, and they did. That is what the prequels so much should have been. They just didn't have enough screen time, because we didn't get to actually see Anakin's descent. It was just kind of like, don't evil, like what's happening.
It was definitely on the they presented it as a very fast, quick decay. Which then loops into, again, because we've got this kind of an interesting dual track of Star Wars and D&D and nerd culture kind of running side by side. Because if you look at the sequel trilogy, definitely feels like fan service for people who've been part of the Star Wars franchise for a while.
Yeah.
I would not recommend starting with episode 7. If you're coming into Star Wars new, 7 is not a great entry point. It's not bad. I would say the only worst thing you could have done is come in on 8.
Right.
Like, because 8, you're like, even myself, I was like, what am I watching? Like, what is this? This doesn't feel Star Wars.
Right. And I think 7 was a rehash of A New Hope. With nostalgia, it was so maple syrup thick of nostalgia that it was like, oh, this is just A New Hope redone. Putting my hat on my head. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay, Willy Wonka. I know what Gear's talking about there.
Fair. But it does get to and this is why I think it's interesting. 4 and 5, I'm so off the track for where I was going. 4 and no, that's fine. And 8 have a definite rhyme to 7. 4 and 7 have a definite rhyme to them, which Lucas has said was the intention of the trilogies. They were supposed to have they were supposed to rhyme with each other. They weren't supposed to be the same, but they were supposed to have very similar vibes. But then you go back to 1 and you're almost like, I can maybe see how under a different director with a different, slightly different script, change the script up a little bit, but keep the outline the same. 1 bounces with 4, bounces with 7.
Right.
You still have that kind of like introduction to the rebel hero.
Yeah.
And they're fighting against a big evil thing. And they have a victory to end it, but it's not the end of the story. It's just the first victory along a long road.
Right.
That tracks. But I was thinking too, just the fact that if we look at the last 30 years of D&D, it has become mechanically less obtuse, more approachable. It has become more, the game is more aware of diversity, both in its script, its writing, and in its marketing.
Yeah.
We don't have Boris Vallejo doing every cover of everything that's attached to it, which, you know, I will raise my glass to every man my age who had a Boris Vallejo poster in their room at some point. There are a lot of us, and I am not ashamed of it. By the way, if you're not familiar, I might not Google it.
Yeah.
If you do, don't do it from a work computer.
Right. And if you have a safe search folder on, you won't find anything.
Point. I had to. There we go. But then we look at Star Wars, which had very similar, like the first series, the Star Wars up until we get into the modern era has always been excessively gritty and grubby and dark and very male dominated. I mean, Carrie Fisher multiple times talked about being the one woman on set.
Yeah.
When she was filming the original trilogy and the awkwardness of it. And nowadays, like The Mandalorian, I think totally changed everything. A lot of the ways 5th edition changed D&D.
Right. Yeah, that's a good comparison. I like that.
It was like, hey, this is a thing that's approachable to everybody. And if you start to look at the most recent, the prequel, the sequel trilogy into The Mandalorian, into Obi-Wan, maybe into the Book of Fett, I'm not entirely sure because I really didn't like it that much.
Yeah, it had its issues. And I could
the Power Rangers.
Yeah,
that was the issue. The Power Rangers.
I could spend an entire episode.
Wait, we have a guest. We have a guest opinion.
I would like to add, I did not particularly enjoy Book of Boba Fett either.
Duly noted. Yeah, and there's a thumbs up. Nice.
The phantom thumb.
Yeah, it's like I said, I could spend an entire happy hour complaining about it. The best parts of the Book of Boba Fett were the Mandalorian, so
the Shadowrun guy in me will disagree slightly.
Okay, got it.
And I personally, not to spend too long beating up on Mr. Fett, I think if they had just made the Power Rangers less Power Ranger and more Street Gang, I would have been fine.
Yes.
Like, I could have forgiven a lot about that movie if they had just, like, not given them Vespas.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
yep. Ooh.
But let's be honest, and Arwen didn't realize how much she was helping the conversation. The animated emote I have of the child popping his head out to wave.
Or goo. Woo.
Yeah, is one of my favorite emotes. Next to the one I have of Aveline doing her little finger wave. But how many people, I'm getting there, how many people that are not Star Wars fans started sporting Star Wars merch because of, quote, Baby Yoda?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That was, the early A New Hope Kenner toy model definitely shows its mark on society in a huge way. huge way. Did that on purpose.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were connected. But it feeds into that though. It's like how much of the fandom grew because people felt more comfortable going, okay, there's something different about this that sticks out. It's not a Space 18 wheeler. It's not a laser sword. It's something different and kind of cute, but not young Anakin cute.
Right.
You know, because young Anakin did not make it on T-shirts.
Yeah.
For which we should all take a moment, bow our heads, and say a prayer of thanks.
For Star Wars peeps out there who hear this or are in the audience, if you have never watched the movie Fanboys, I highly recommend Fanboys. It is a movie about Star Wars, and it's about before the prequels came out and how it's really funny. It's got Kristen Bell in it, and it is a hoot. It's a very good, funny comedy about Star Wars. So definitely check that out at some point. I think too the accessibility of Star Wars and D&D and just, you know, from a company standpoint, yes, it's not just for nerd boys anymore. He's definitely an amazing thing. It makes the game more prevalent, more popular, more accessible. You definitely, as a company, that's a good thing, but also for a game that is a social game, I mean, boom, awesome. You guys are doing it right, you know.
Well, and Gear Nail's here too with the comment, you can't leave the house without seeing a Star Wars t-shirt. What a great time to be living.
Exactly.
And that gets into a lot of that, like, it's weird because my sixth period, who love to talk about everything not related to what we are supposed to be doing. Today of all days, the day before their final exam, the what I call the Hail Mary review day, where just throw up your questions and pray that I can get them all answered before the hour runs out so you can pass your final day. Wanted desperately to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. and they did it for two reasons. One, because we haven't hung out in a couple of weeks.
Right.
My second hour, actually, I taught all of their probability this last 2.5 weeks by teaching them to play D&D.
Nice.
Now we didn't go all in, and maybe that would have made a difference because I still in my brain had my objectives were not students will be able to play D&D. My objective was students will know how to apply the and rule to calculating probability. So I had to like be very cognizant of, okay, we need to hit certain benchmarks along the way to make sure I'm getting them their probability content. So they had heard I'd done that for that class, not them. So they were like, they've been kind of on this, when do we get to talk about the fun stuff kick? But they've watched Stranger Things. They've seen the trailers, at least. They know it's a thing. About a third of the class had actual like knowledge about the basics of D&D.
Yeah.
So there was like a certain amount of like they could appreciate like some like when the one guy goes, so you win by killing Vecna? Like, no, that's actually no. That's not how it works. That's not how any of it works.
I won D&D.
Yeah. But like other kids were correcting him. It's like, no, dude, that's not how it works. Like right, they were ahead of me. They were saying it because it's worked its way into pop culture now. It's not just geek culture. It's pop culture. It's mainstream. Yep.
I again, you know, what a time to be alive. It really is just amazing, you know. Gear often points out he'll go to somewhere like Target, you know, the most capitalist mainstream store like in the universe, and D&D books are there. A whole section of D&D books at Target, where when you were a kid, it was a privilege to have D&D books in like a bookstore. If they had one small shelf of some D&D stuff, you were freaking out. You were just like, I will be right here the entire time the rest of you are in the bookstore. You all go get books. I am here. I have found Mecca, so
And it was usually nestled right around where they had the books on like card games. Like 50, you had like 50 variations of poker, bridge strategies for beginners, bridge strategies for advanced players, Dungeons and Dragons, Monopoly, and 50 other games you didn't know involved paper money.
right.
And it was like, who is this Dewey guy, and what did he do to the bookstore? Like, this is not. But now, like, it's becoming much more common, which is kind of neat.
Yeah.
And it makes these conversations a lot easier to have with people because you can. It's not as weird. I remember. Okay, tangentially, Monsters of the Multiverse at Target.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, they're really ahead of the curve. Of course, there's a little part of me that's still on the you bought a book? Weird. I just throw $10 at a website and I get everything I need searchable. But then I also did just print all of the rules for Spirit of the Century. So I have it to review so I can learn the system. Because I do struggle to learn rules digitally, whereas it's much easier for me to learn them by reading physical stuff and then having the digital version to cross-reference later. Which, next Thursday, I'm going to try running as part of the Evil Hat Games Day over on startplaying.games.
Nice.
So I have a session scheduled for the Spirit of the Century.
Great Pulp Fiction type game. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
And the one of the writers is like, well, you should probably give everyone pre-gens so you can maximize the time that they play. And I'm like, no. In a 3-hour session, if we spend a full hour making characters, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like that alone should be half the fun.
Right. Well, particularly then they build the relationships of the characters as you go and stuff. So yeah. Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and you do a lot of that good backstory and that talking, but it's the fact that I remember I was going to go on this tangent. Mrs. Noor and I got involved in raiding in Warcraft.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember telling my parents we couldn't come over, we couldn't stay late for dinner because we had a raid.
Yeah.
Like we could come over for dinner, we could be there at noon, but we had to be on our way back to the house by 7, so we could be at the computer at 8 for the raid.
Yep.
And it wasn't even like a heavy raid. We weren't in a raid guild.
Right.
We knew of a guy whose guild ran an open raid on Ice Crown Citadel.
Right.
And it was like the first 28 people to show up went. And if we didn't get 20 people, we didn't go.
Right. Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it was very casual in that sense. We never got terribly far. But it was kind of like their bonus night for the raid guild.
Well, and also for them too, it was probably a recruitment thing where like, okay, that guy's good. When maybe we need a new warlock,
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
But the twist of it was like when I was first trying to explain to my parents, we can't stay after 6.
Right.
It was like, because I have to go play a video game. and I had to I had to frame with like, piece of money, consider it this way. Mrs. Noir and I are in a bowling league that meets every Sunday night, and we are expected to be there. So if there are enough people to run a mini tournament, we do.
Yep.
Except it's not bowling, it's Warcraft.
Yep.
And it's not a tournament, it's called a raid.
Yes. Yeah.
And I had to kind of, nowadays I could say, I can't, I have a game of Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
And I did that. I dropped off Kitty K at a friend's birthday party. And the birthday party was supposed to run noon until 5. And I had to pick her up at 4 because I had a game at 5 o'clock.
Right.
And I had to be sure I got her home, got her settled, and then got all my stuff set up. And I said, yeah, I run a D&D game on Twitch. And like the Twitch part was the only part that didn't click.
Right.
But running a D&D game via Zoom on a weekend was like, oh yeah, that tracks.
Yep.
That's cool.
No biggie. Cool. Go on. Yeah. Last Sunday, the girls went and played their first in real life at a table game at someone else's house.
Ooh.
And so I had to actually start my Wildermiss stream a half hour late because I had to get them and drop them off at the time my stream normally starts. So we will see. I may have to have more of those Sundays where my stream starts later to drive them to go play D&D at with their buds.
Isn't the oldest elf almost 16?
Well, they're both old enough, but because of COVID, they didn't take driver training or anything. So they're just starting that process now.
You're not. It's not that they play a lot of video games in your house. They should be fine. Just get them behind the wheel and show them where all the buttons are.
That's one of the things we're worried about the youngest, because she likes the Lego game, and you get her in a car in the Lego game and it's terror. It might as well be GTA, not Legos she's playing, So.
Oh, that's epic. Do we want to weigh in on the conversation about Warhammer? That's
sure.
In chat. There's just a good back and forth about how expensive Warhammer minis are.
Oh my god.
And I feel like that's a podcast onto itself.
Yeah, but to weigh in, we will put a pin in that one, because I just got the 9th edition book for my birthday, and it comes in at, it doesn't say on the back, expensive. It's a $300 to get started in that game. It really is. It's like a $300 commitment to even before even a figure is painted and on the field. So yeah. Whew. So
yeah, that's kind of intense. Highlights from the last couple of weeks of gaming, or do you want to project forward a couple of weeks of gaming? We're at that stage now where we kind of talk about some stuff we've been working on, some of the things we're excited for coming up. What's on the plate that's got you either proud of or excited for?
So I thought that we would have one more session of our old guard gaming group. D&D, they've found the deepists and the cult there, but there's something wrong with the cult. And then one of the deepists tells them, it's the forever mind. And so now this week, last week they went up against the forces of the forever mind, and there's Drugar and stuff, and they haven't figured out who the forever mind is, but that they were doing the finale this Saturday. And then after that, for the summer, all summer long, we're running a mecha hack game. And so that's what Old Guard is up to. I got Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu, Pulp, SCP over at Indoor on Thursdays. And I've got tomorrow, I will let you talk about it, but I will promote it. I will be guesting for the next couple weeks over, on this channel on a Kids on Brooms with a twist. With a twist. And
I don't know how much of a twist it is, because if you think about Stranger Things being super grounded in the 80s and Kids on Bikes basically being Stranger Things, the RPG.
Yeah.
Kids on Brooms being 80s kids with magic is pretty on brand. But yeah, it's that's tomorrow night. We're going to do a 3-week, maybe. The goal is 3 sessions. We might be done in 2. We will not run longer than 3. I've already found where to cut content to get to the finale before we get to the end of the 3rd session. But it's Kids on Brooms set in the suburbs in the mid 90s, which is going to be a lot of fun. I actually discovered a escape room style ARG that I had written a decade ago.
Yeah.
Because the goal was when I created this, I was like an escape room, but it was going to be spread out over the community. So there'd be hints about where to go to find different puzzles, solve the puzzle, and then go somewhere else to get more stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wonder if I can adapt this into a game. And I got thinking, well, Kids on Brooms is pretty close to like recapturing the teenage experience. So I theoretically could run this like an RPG. So I've been spending the last week like typing up all of the handouts for it, which has been exciting and fun. And I'm wishing there were more handwriting fonts on Google Documents, so I could do a better job of like letting you guys try to track handwriting style.
Right.
Right now, in order to keep life simple for everybody, I just have a part of it is in the font and the rest is in plain text to make it readable. So you can still say, "Oh, I recognize that handwriting from this character."
Right.
But you don't have to decipher all of it. But that's tomorrow. That's Wednesday night for the next couple of weeks. Sunday we have off this coming up, but we've been working our way through Ravenloft, which has been
1921.
Which has been kind of fun watching everyone sort of like find their vibe. In a lot of ways, if I do this again, when I do this again, I want to work harder at the period vibe and adapting the core game than I did this time. Gotcha. Because right now, it is entirely a 1921 game because of the characters of the players. They went all in on, like, they have great characters they've developed, a very 1920s vibe. But there was a moment in our 2 sessions back where one of the characters says, we've obviously slipped into some kind of magical dimension. Right. And I get that vibe, and I totally get why, even with the Cthulhu-esque background, right, his character was like, yeah, no, we're not in the real world anymore. And that made me stop and go, okay, that's legit. There's been a little too much magic too early in the story arc to keep this from being that vibe. That's fine. Yeah. As Arwen says, her monk is getting harder and harder to hit, which is good. Absolutely good. And then this coming Saturday, I am celebrating my retirement. It'll be my first weekend as a retired teacher. I'm having an uncapped stream subathon. I'm doing a Patreon push. Nice. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm going to have tied to, if I hit certain Patreon benchmarks, I'm going to start working on specific projects for the Patreon. We are going to be supporting a friend of ours who is facing some significant medical bills. So I'll be posting links for that periodically throughout the day. I still don't know what I'm going to do on the stream yet. Like, I've planned everything except what game to play. Right. There's been some requests to maybe do some Jackbox. I probably will have Beat Saber set up if the technology will work for me and everyone can be patient while I fire up the last round of everything. We might do that for some of the day. Plus, Kitty K is huge on her Beat Saber. She'll come down and hang out with us if we do that. I might just play XCOM because I just know it's a fun game to play with chat. Right. You can never go wrong with going, hey, you're not in here. Let's put you on the mission. Oh, hey, you died. Right. Sorry about that.
They're feasting on your spleen. No, stop.
Oops. I thought we had more cover there. Guess not. Since we still don't have our X-Men version of XCOM yet. Yeah. That we're supposed to have. Actually, I think it's just Marvel. I don't think it's X-Men. I think it's full Marvel. Supposed to have it by now.
That'd be cool. I'd play that. And then Sunday morning, Wilder Myth with all my toys and stuff. Oh, speaking of toys, I wanted to show you guys. So these were lightsabers that we made. Well, that Dr. Gear made. He's in chat. He made these for Phantom Menace, and we sold them out of the trunk of my car. Or the back of his truck, I can't remember, and we like nearly sold out And then over the years, we made new ones so that we could do lightsaber battles in the house. They're like LARP weapons, but these have been around, since like 1999. They're
Boffer
classics.
weapons.
Mm-hmm.
The good old days.
Yep.
I remember those.
Mm-hmm. Now it's full on foam extrusion, and stuff. I'm like amazed at what they can do with foam. So it's something I want to maybe someday when I retire, I'll monkey with that kind of thing.
Well, when I get to my second retirement, we can look into that.
All right. Sounds good.
I only get a couple weeks of true retirement, and then I'm supposed to be working again. So I got A, find a job, or B, hope all this other stuff works out.
Right. Knock on wood.
So, parting thoughts to our podcast hangers outers.
Whatever your fandom is, it needs no explanation. You are amazing at what you do and what you love, and don't let anyone ever tell you different.
That works. Thank you for listening. If you would be ever so kind as to consider dropping us a review on your podcast platform of choice, we'll be ever grateful. And until the next time we all meet up, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay safe.